because the accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus are recorded in remarkable detail this week. And so it is the greatest week. It is the most significant week for those of us in my tradition, Christianity. We know so much about what Jesus did this week. We know where he ate dinner tonight, for instance, and who he ate dinner with. And we know what he ate on Thursday night and the significance of why he ate it. We know that he was killed on Friday. And according to the accounts of the early church, we know that he was raised again on Sunday. So it's a powerful week in my life and in the life of the tradition I'm a part of. It's also a really challenging week because frankly, the level of self-sacrifice that he models is completely challenging. It is entirely challenging. And as a leader of a faith community, I'm aware of every day the failures of the church to adequately represent the one that we claim to represent. So it's both a wonderful week and it's a super challenging week, but I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. The church I lead started 17 years ago this week. And so, as far as churches go, we just basically got our license and we aren't even adults yet. And it could go either way at this point. You don't really know. We're 17. So thank you for a minute to speak to you and for the invitation to include prayer in this meeting. I'm grateful for it. Don't take it lightly. So join me if you like in a short prayer. Thank you, Lord. Grateful for this city. Grateful for this week. Thank you for the women and men who lead this city. I pray for them tonight, clarity, so they can see things as they are, wisdom, so they can know what to do, and courage to do it. We look to you for help, for your sake, for your glory, for the restoration of all things. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor, so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And that was very, very good words. Thank you. All right. Welcome to the April 12th, 2022 regular meeting, City of Lincoln, City Council, Redevelopment Successor Agency, Public Financing Authority. I call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Yes, Councilmember Joyner.
Here.
Councilmember Carlskent.
Here.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Here.
Councilmember Silhai.
Here.
And Mayor Andriotta.
Here. We did not have any closed session, right? So we have no report.
Correct, but I do have reports from April 5th
Oh, great.
and March 18th, which we just haven't had a regular meeting since then, but there is no reportable action for those two items.
Okay, thank you. And then Ms. Molikoff is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, item number 5, agenda modifications. Do we have any agenda modifications? Anybody from the council, any staff? Okay, seeing none. Item number 6, presentations. We do not have any tonight. So moving right along, item number 7, public comment on non-agenda items. Ms. Scanlon, do we have any public comments on Zoom?
No on Zoom. Does anybody
Any
in
public
the
comments
chambers?
in the council chambers? Okay, all right. Item number 8, the consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine business and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the city council or resident requests a specific item be removed from the consent agenda for separate action. Any items removed will be considered after the remainder of the consent agenda. Do any of my colleagues wish to remove an item from the consent agenda?
Yes, Madam Mayor, 8H, please.
Okay,
8E for a comment.
8E?
Right.
Okay. Any other ones?
Do we need to, if it's just a comment, or can't it be included in the vote and you make the comment?
No, we can have him make a comment before we vote. Is that okay? Or do you want us to actually remove it? You want to, I'm fine either way. We'll just hold.
Let me do it. Pull it,
Okay, we will do that. Okay,
because there
Great.
might be discussion.
okay. Any members of the public in the council chambers or on Zoom wish to pull an item from the consent agenda?
None on Zoom.
Okay, we're sure nobody's hand is raised.
Yes.
That was directed at me, not at you. Okay, all right. Well, then we will pull 8E and 8H, and I will accept a motion for approval of the remainder of the consent agenda.
I move.
Okay, so I think
By the way.
Councilmember Joyner and then second Councilmember Lordson. Roll call, Ms. Scanlon?
Yes. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriata.
Yes. Okay, why don't we go ahead and start with 8E, and we'll do that one first.
They,
And this is adopt resolution 2022-72, authorizing the city manager to execute a task order with Kimley Horn in the amount of $89,843 for professional engineering services for the NEV and golf cart master plan update.
the only comment I have, I just, for some reason, just noticed it today. In the past, this study, which is NEV Golf Cart Master Plan, has been funded with CMAQ dollars so that it didn't impact regular street dollars. And that, in fact, most of all the work called for in the plan that ended up being, all the striping stuff ended up being with CMAQ dollars. So did we try to get them? Do we have them? Or we didn't know about it?
I should have talked about this before.
I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah.
notice.
So I'm going to be a little bit deficient on some of the detailed questions about capital tonight because our city engineer actually welcomed a new child into the world just today, a little girl. What I would say is that to the extent that CMAQ is available for that purpose, we will make sure that it is received for it. And if not, that it's a project we need to do anyway, and streets is appropriate.
That answer your.
And I'm sorry for bringing it up this late, rather.
That's okay. You can bring it up anytime. All right, are there any other comments or questions from the council on this?
Nope.
Anybody from the public want to ask a question?
Good catch, Dan.
Yeah. No? Okay, then I will accept a motion to approve 8E.
I move that we approve 8E.
Second.
Okay,
Thank you. Councilmember Carlskent,
Yes.
Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai, and Mayor Andriata.
yes. And item 8H, adopt resolution 2022-75, authorizing an allocation of $232,700 from the unencumbered fund 725 PFE wastewater to CIP 602 Joyner Park reclaimed water. The city manager to execute and award the contract for construction with C&D Contractors, Inc. for $545,410 and authorize the interim city engineer to approve change orders not to exceed $81,812. And the city manager to execute a task order with Coastland Civil Engineering in the amount of $53,310 for construction, management, and inspection services. Councilmember Joyner.
Yes, Madam Mayor, thank you. Out of an abundance of caution on this one, I actually don't believe that I need to recuse myself, but I don't want to give any appearance of impropriety here. This project is being done on property directly adjacent to property that my family owns. So I'm going to go ahead and recuse myself.
Wait for you to step outside. I have a feeling it'll take you longer to walk out there.
Feels like there's pressure to walk
Yes,
out.
no, it's okay.
Yes.
It's okay.
Okay.
All right. So I don't imagine, does anybody have any questions or comments, any concerns about this one? Yeah, no, I know. Yeah,
Nope,
I was just starting with you first. Yeah. Anybody from the public wish to comment on this item?
None on Zoom.
Okay.
I don't see-
All right. Seeing none, then I will accept a motion to
I move
approve
we
8H.
adopt resolution 2022-17.
75.
75.
75. You said 17.
2022-75.
Yeah. It's okay. We got you.
75.
I
Okay.
second.
Okay. Roll call, Ms. Scanlon.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Carlson.
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai.
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen.
Yes.
And Mayor Andriata.
Yes. All right, somebody grab Councilmember Turner. All right. Item 9, public hearings. It looks like we don't have any tonight. So item 10, wow, we are rolling right along and I'm not going to jinx, I'm not going to jinx us. No, I'm not. Yeah. Item 10A, council discussion regarding the implementation of a team of sworn officers specifically focused on specific quality of life issues affecting the Lincoln community. And Chief Matt Alves is going to be presenting.
Great. Madam Mayor, Council, thank you for having me this evening and being able to present this item. So this item is an informational item and discussion recommendation only. On the March 8th meeting at the regular City Council meeting, Council was discussing the Placer County Regional Homeless Task Force project. And during that project, there was a conversation regarding keeping our efforts and our assets local to be able to impact the homeless issue within the city of Lincoln. And there was a question asked directly of me as to what we could provide from the Lincoln Police Department at a local level immediately to address this. And my response was, there's nothing that we can do locally to make a significant impact with the staffing that we have now. And that my opinion was repeated and constant engagement and contact is what would be necessary to have any real results from a program like that. And I, off the top of my head, said, well, if you hired me 4 officers, I could put a team together to address this directly, and that would be our best bet for impact. So what this discussion is a costing and a model and just a general high-level overview of what a team like that would look like. By no means are we looking for any answers or any decisions to be made on this evening, but this is simply me to present to you what it would look like to have the top tier of a program like this. So the proposal would be for a 4-person sworn unit who would be specifically dedicated to focus on homeless issues and quality of life issues within the city of Lincoln. And the reason you have this team is because our current staff, they're assigned to patrol and they do patrol duties. The call comes in, they respond, they answer the call, and that's what they do all day long. But being able to address a specific problem and take the time to focus on the problem and follow up and follow up and follow up, you can't be working patrol to do that. That's just not how police work is built. So the 4-person team, I'll talk about structure first before we get to cost. The team would be a 4-person sworn team of police officers and would be either supervised by a lieutenant or a detective sergeant. We need to look into that to see who would be most appropriate to supervise the unit. And the team would be divided into 2 teams of 2. And this would allow us to operate the units as a 2-person unit, 7-day-a-week coverage. You need 2 because for officer safety, you need a contact officer, you need a cover officer. We can't send a single officer down into the ravine to deal with problems when no one even knows that they're there. So I envisioned that this team would work 4 10-hour shifts. You'd have team 1 Sunday to Wednesday, team 2 Wednesday to Saturday. There's certainly some wiggle room for how we would structure and the hours that they would work. And there is an overlap day on that Wednesday, which would be great for collaboration or large scale projects where you just need a bunch of staffing to go out there and deal with the issue. And when not in the field, the teams would be able to work in existing office space that we have within the department. So we do have some space carved out that the team could be assigned to. The duties of a team like this, the homeless would be the primary duty. And as I said earlier, the constant contact is what's important because that's what's going to build rapport. That's what's going to build trust. That's what's going to build a relationship between us and the individuals who are down by the ravine or wherever they may be homeless in the city, and be able to ideally gain some voluntary compliance or be able to get them the resources that they need. But as many of you have witnessed over the past 2 weeks, the repeated contacts that Mana Bass and her group have allowed them to be on a first name basis, allowed them to give hugs to these individuals. And that's only accomplished by constant and repeated contact. us going down there once every 3 weeks to deal with something, we're the bad guys walking in at that point. We never had a chance to get to know them. They didn't get a chance to get to know us. Also, along with that, I envision this team would be available for other things like chronic drug activity in the city, municipal code violations, repeated vandalism in a specific area, traffic enforcement in areas that are experiencing frequent violations, and participation in regional work groups about homelessness and DUI enforcement. So they would be a jack of all trades type team, with the focus being the homelessness, absolutely. But the beauty of having a team that's dedicated to this is they can flex their hours. If there's something going on that happens at midnight, we can shift their schedule that day, and they can work late. We couldn't do that with patrol. The selection process, we have a standard selection process already built into our policy that we're very familiar with and we use all the time for special assignments. So we're very familiar with that. That's easy to do. Timing is one of the unfortunate things. Timing will take a while because, as I said, this would be we could name the members of the team, but they wouldn't be able to be assigned to the team until we have an officer backfilled to fill their spot. And best case scenario, you're talking 6 months if you're able to hire a lateral officer and get them up and running through their field training program. But it's more reasonable to think 9 months, maybe up to a year before we'd be able to have a full 4-person team up and running. But we'd certainly go as fast as we can. We're getting good at that. The cost. It's not cheap, and per person, if we're talking homeless, it is a kind of an expensive venture, but I won't break it down too far. But for the total unit, year one, there is some startup costs, about $10,000 for hiring and equipment, but you're looking at about $648,000 for your year one. That's fully burdened police officer wage. And subsequent years without the onboarding costs, you're looking at about $605,000 ongoing. Operating costs would be minimal. They need no more equipment really than a standard patrol officer. So we have current inventory, and again, the onboarding fully equips the police officer. Down the road, we would be needing to look at some dedicated vehicles, but with our current fleet, we could make it work for a year or so. So in general, that's the whole idea of what the unit looks like. It's a very simple unit to assemble and operate. This is very common. A lot of other agencies call these POP teams, which are problem-oriented policing. And that's what I envision this to be. Whatever it is that we call it, whatever term we want to use or acronym, we can certainly come up with that. But that's my vision of this team, just having a dedicated team who can go out and address these specific quality of life issues, which we get all the time. We're always getting complaints about issues that do require more time than an officer is able to deal with. And it frustrates me that we can't handle them. But the city manager mentioned a term of, quality of life type team. And that's how I envision it, is it would be improving the quality of life of the homeless individuals. And then also being multifaceted, they'd be able to deal with other quality of life issues that are plaguing the city of Lincoln, and being able to stop those and just put a lot more effort into it. So with that high level overview, I am here for any questions you have or any clarification you may need, or any direction at all is what I'm looking for as to how you'd want to go with this, whether you'd want me to bring forward a different proposal, table it for now, bring it back later. I am at your call. So by all means, ask away.
Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate all of that time and energy that you put into creating this proposal. Very exciting stuff. Anybody have a question or comment? We'll start with Ian.
Making a quality of life more than homeless. But the homeless aspect of it, wouldn't that, or at least everything that I read, say there's a big, huge health component, mental health component to that problem? So wouldn't that require some sort of coordination with Health and Human Services to also kind of team with your team? Did you? think about that, talk about that, or cost that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Placer County Health and Human Services will come out and assist us whenever we need help. We just need to coordinate it. I don't envision them being necessarily an everyday part of the team, but as we get to know the individuals and be able to navigate that, is this drug abuse or is this mental health? And then at some point realize, okay, this person and this person and this person are having some mental health issues. Let's schedule a day to have HHS come down with us and then introduce, this is Jim, this is Sally, and this is who they are. And then make that introduction from a trusted partner of them and say, I want you to meet my friend from HHS. Let's go ahead and have a conversation. So yeah, I wouldn't envision them being an everyday part of the team, but they are a resource that we could draw on that doesn't cost us anything.
Oh, yes, it does, but we were already doing it.
Well, what
Yeah.
I think the idea here is that if we have dedicated officers who are doing this job all the time, then there's continuity between HHS and the police force. And like you said, they know who to contact, they know where the point of contact is, instead of like, okay, who are we talking today, right? So that's a good question, Dan.
And the other question, I'm sure you're expecting it out of me because I'm a financial pinhead, $660,000 dedicated to how many homeless people?
Well, we point and count 30, yeah,
About 30 campers.
yes.
So, so the success rate cost is very high. But that's what I got meant about spreading it over the other stuff that you do,
But- Can I interject? But it's not, if you cost it out because you're measuring it on a one-to-one basis, sure. But that is not the overall impact of what that would have, because that is preventative. And so if you're looking at it like, forest for the trees, you're going to be getting much more bang for your buck, because cost out how much it actually costs to triage at a state or county level for each unhoused, right? And then look at the trajectory of typical growth and what we're looking at. And if we're able to maintain or even improve upon what we've experienced in the last few years by adding that into the mix, it's cheap.
And 27K is less than 10% of the cost of our sister
I
organization.
can say it's cheap.
$300,000.
27K is for the first one. Once you get them housed, the price goes up with
Right.
each
We're
continual.
talking like initial intervention, but I think that there's a preventative aspect to it that needs to be worked into any equation when you're talking math.
That's it for now for me.
Mostly a curiosity, I think. Top teams work, we know that. Love to be able to bring one on board. We come back to the question of how do we pay for it? How do we afford it? We just authorized 4 new officers. I don't think you've got them all on board yet.
We have one vacancy that should be filled within the next month and a half.
Okay,
Then we're full staff.
that's really good news. I'd love to be able to add 4 more. We're thin on revenues to be able to do that with the discussion we're going to have on fire here soon. I guess what I'm curious about is this: if we focus on the homeless issue, there's a lot of money out there, state money, to address homelessness. I don't think everybody comes at it from a law enforcement side. They come at it from other programs. Is there a possibility of pulling down state monies to stand up a POP team to address these issues?
Sustainable state money.
At least for 3 years, yeah.
Yeah, this week I've done some research for current state grants and what's out there. Most of them are so specific, it's very hard to fit what we're trying to do into that. I'm not by no means, and this was just a few days of looking. Some of them are so specific that it just, at the end of the day, we wouldn't qualify for it. And a lot of the grants out there are not, they won't say they're not for law enforcement, but they're not for law enforcement. So, if you're hiring if you're building a transition center or hiring HHS workers, there's a lot of money out there for that. But a lot of it is just how we approach it and how can we, I mean, we're not trying to be health and human service workers, but how can we get close to that without overstepping our bounds and having a shot at it? I've also looked into environmental grants that would apply. Again, there's nothing out there that I've been able to find yet that would totally work for that. If we had a boat ramp, we can get some grant funds, that's for sure. But we don't have a boat ramp. So, but there,
So what is the said value of this boat ramp?
Right.
well, it says highly navigable
Waterways of the Americas, yes.
Yeah,
Well,
so,
and I would think too that, I mean, that's a good idea, but I would think too that because we were wanting this team to not only focus on homeless, that would be the top one, but also like, I'm thinking like traffic, like like that's huge in this town. That would be really hard to like separate that money out, I would think, right? Like, well, it's not funding for traffic cops, it's for homeless, but I don't know, that would be kind of sticky.
right, and
I
at
would
the end of the
assume.
day, I need to look myself in the mirror and know that
Yes.
if my name goes on this grant, that we put in for this grant for the
We're
right
using it for what
reasons
we-
and that we're not
Don't get me
we're
wrong, I'm
not
not opposed to
getting
state money. I'm
we're not
just-
getting too much in the gray area,
Yeah.
but we're always on the look. There's just nothing open right now that I've been able to find. But there are grants everywhere. You're right. And it's just finding the right one in that haystack.
Right, thank you, Bill.
Yeah, your presentation is great and there's a lot of detail. I just have one question though. You're talking about 4 sworn officers. What would they be doing on a day-to-day business basis?
Day to day, it would be, in my vision, it would be, you're down there in the areas that the homeless frequent often. You're there daily. You're having daily contacts with them. And really, I mean, how long does that take? The creek walks take 2 hours to get from one end to the other, just to say hi and let everyone know that you're there. And that's kind of the main thing. And then, once you kind of get your creek walks done and do that, if there are any projects you're working on, you need to work on that project. Any meetings with the regional groups, you go to the meetings, and then you deal with the plague type issues, deal with burned out drug houses that people are occupying. And just, again, it's more of it's proactive, but it's reactive as far as collecting the complaints that we receive and then dedicating the time with that. But they'll be busy. There's plenty of work to do. There's plenty of things that we're not doing. But again, on the homeless, there's just, especially for the first 6 months, there's going to be so much getting to know HHS, getting up there to Auburn to meet them, having them come down here, meeting with the Adopt a Creek folks and just developing those relationships. And a lot of it is just going to be organic depending on what the needs are. But I think until we can really get our fingers into what's going on, we don't know what the needs are. Adopt a Creek has a pretty good idea of what's going on, but until we can get down there and really get to know these folks and how can we play a role in this, how the day really breaks down is a bit up in the air. But definitely daily contacts and addressing the issues of the day and any ongoing projects that they have.
So you'd be also involved with compliance, making sure they're not starting fires.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And
That's
the expanse of their
That's the
settlement.
beauty of this. All of these things that we've been talking about of we want to do the 10 by 10 campsites and, the fire, okay, no more fires after this date. That's the beauty of a program like this is now we have folks that as rapidly as the municipal code changes, as rapidly as laws change, we have a group of folks that can now be the experts on that and be completely up to date and be able to enforce and educate as these things come up. So we can make it wide open as far as what we're going to have them do. And really the sky's the limit.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you asked your question of how could we pay for it. I have an idea, but I need to know. Oh, sorry. Do you think that you could, at least for a short term, scale back the proposal that you presented to us and start with 2 as like a pilot program?
I proposed to you the Cadillac in my dream.
I'd like to give you the Cadillac, but
Yes.
could you take like a Pinto?
How- I could, if I was to get 2 officers, that is exponentially better than we're able to do now. So I would absolutely welcome that idea and be able to prove how much more beneficial adding 2 more. would
So
be.
here's my idea-ish. It came about in a conversation with Sean when we were going over the agenda. So we do have remaining ARPA funds. We are discussing a program of similar nature after this one for fire. We've already set aside probably 1 million, right, for nonprofit. Of that, I'm hoping that we can bifurcate some of that off and feed it to scale some of the Adopt a Creek community outreach efforts to help assist in the very successful activities that they're doing out there. What if we couple that progress after doing the Adopt a Creek, doing the walk, right? Talking to Mana, what if we couple that investment dedicated, some of the portion of nonprofit towards her arm of it and create a funding stream that's a pilot project with ARPA funds for 2 officers for a set amount of time, because then you're getting the in bulked up outreach. And then you're also going to get that enforcement, which is lacking. That's the piece that's missing right now, and put a human face to it, be able to couple both of those. So you're going to get, a force multiplier of investment and create a dedicated funding stream from those funds that aren't general fund dollars. And then if it works, which I think that it will, and we can see what's working, what's not, we can reevaluate that program at a later date, maybe a year, whatever comes up, right? And then talk about getting you the other 2. Does that sound feasible to you?
That's feasible to me. Is it feasible to you to come up with?
Well, I mean, I don't want to propose an investment in something that you're like, that's not even, you know what I
No,
mean? Give me the whole hog or give me nothing.
There are certain programs where I need to put a hard line on, which you might hear in 10C later on,
Right.
as far as a number. This one is not that.
Okay.
This one.
That was my concern.
Yeah, I can absolutely.
Obviously not one. You need the
Right.
2.
I
You
would
need the
be-
partner.
yeah, I can't do 1, but I would be thrilled with 2. I'd be ecstatic with 4.
Was that something council would be open to considering bringing back?
Well, I'm trying to understand. Are you talking about like a grant out of ARPA funds
Yeah.
to fund 2 years worth of a pilot program?
Yep. For 2
people?
officers.
You're talking about a total of 600K out of ARPA funds.
Which we have like, what, 7 million left?
Yeah, no, I understand that. But you likened it to the fire, and that's not like the
Well,
fire.
what it's like is that we didn't get the SAFER grant. And so we came up with this, I think, rather great idea of creating our own grant-like program to get them staffed. Well, what if we model that thinking and say, okay, let's do a pilot project?
A major part of the fire thinking is that we're backfilling with the percentage of 101.
Right.
Okay, that's different than a grant program where you put 600K aside to hire 2 officers for 2 years. And then you have to come up with the money out of 100.
Well, but aren't we also, my understanding with that, the tax sharing agreement funding is it's not going to be fully dedicated to fire. We promised parity on each side of the house moving forward. So conceivably moving forward, there would be money for additional positions. You're hiring out of existing patrol now if we give you the money to plug it into this project. So let's say that we don't have the funds for a dedicated to sustain the pilot project. They could just go back to patrol because we probably would be hiring people anyway. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we're going to be continuing to beef up PD.
All things remaining the same.
Well, no
Yes,
one has a crystal
there's
ball.
Very real.
We can't have like
Possibility.
analysis paralysis and just not
I
make
understand. I
decisions
understand.
because we don't know if the economy is
No,
going
I-
to crash.
But we
right?
need to go into everything with our eyes wide
Possible.
open.
Well, that's why I'm proposing a pilot project with it. And then if that pilot that turns out to not be sustainable, those officers could just be reassumed into your normal force. Does that sound?
They-
I literally came up with it like 40 minutes ago, so it's not fully fleshed out. Give me a break.
So my actual point that I didn't get out was that there is a very real possibility within the next couple of years of recession swinging back around. We have got out of control inflation at the moment. I hope it doesn't happen, but it could. I've been through it before. I'm seeing the beginnings of a very familiar pattern. So we need to be aware of that we could find ourselves in a position where the revenues we thought were going to come forward as a result of the tax sharing agreement.
I hear
renegotiation
you,
do
but
not.
even if we had a beefed up force and then the economy hit, we'd still be in the position of potentially having to cutting our force. That's just the hard reality of all of a sudden money going away. I don't think you can't, we need to be, if you know money's going away, you don't spend the money, but you don't not make decisions that could be good for your community because you're afraid that there might be an economic
Not
condition out of
afraid,
our
just aware.
control. Do you know what I mean? Like we would have to be cutting it anyway, if that happened.
I think we need to get a better handle on 101. That I think we'll have a better handle in a few minutes, but
Because even,
I,
go ahead.
we,
See what you started, Matt?
I think I
No, we
started it
did.
because I asked him.
There
You
you
can
go.
just blame me.
he's a fire guy too,
I know.
don't forget that.
We appreciate
This is a
you.
great discussion. I'm certainly supportive of continuing down this path, having
I
the
am.
conversation, getting me some solid numbers that we can take a look at.
Giving it more than an hour of time to think about.
Yeah.
And would that, you be interested in us putting staff time to try and flesh out a potential pilot project program with 2 officers moving forward and see,
But doesn't-
seeing what we could do?
You need to go any deeper
Do
than
I-
you already have.
I don't think I need,
No,
I don't think I
You
need to
have-
present anything. It's
Yep.
just,
Right.
can we
but
pay
just
for
cut
it?
it in half, cut his dream in half.
Right, and where's the funding gonna come from?
Right.
But yeah, it's 2 officers on a team. I think it's been my dream to have a pop type team in the city and it's well overdue. There are just so many problems that need dedicated staff time that can be remedied and resolved that would go towards the betterment of the quality of life in the community. So it's, yeah, you give me 2, I would be very happy with that and they will be working.
So here's my thing, and then I'll stop talking. I want it, and maybe I naively want it, but I really feel like you put energy and efforts towards prevention, you're going to be paying a whole lot more for it if you don't, right? What is that? It's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. But if you look at the trends statewide in terms of the unhoused, homeless encampments and creeks, what happens to your ecosystem, fires, crime, crime within the homeless population. And then you're going to reach a critical mass where all of a sudden you have a tipping point and now it becomes a patrol problem, but we don't have the patrol officers. And now you need a lot more patrol officers on a more sustained, time period, and you have a bigger budget and you're in a pickle. Well, I know we're going to need those anyway, but what if we could cut off and slow the trajectory in the beginning? And what we have happening down there is very encouraging and very rare. And I, look back and I'm aware of activities all over the state, and not many stories are the same as ours right now. And so if we can find a way to double our investment on efforts that are working and then put some more enforcement and prevention to it, I think that it'll end up being more than double worth whatever invested funds we put towards those officers on the back end for the community
Yeah.
and for the pressures on your police force.
The other policing proactive things are gangs
Yes.
and having enough of the equivalent of a pop group working
Yep.
pre-gang problems,
I'm
so
100% agree.
it all comes down to the dollars and the sustainability. I do not want to get at all in the position that previous councils have been in and hire over 3 years, 40 officers and lay 40 officers.
Well, that would be irresponsible, but I think we need to move the dial forward a little. And ARPA dollars can be spent on homeless prevention, which means we could create a funding stream for a pilot project.
I'm
Yeah.
fine with I wasn't fine with coupling that with the other
The one-on-one.
funding stores.
No,
But
I
that's
just
what
meant
you-
that we
but
get
that's
creative
what
with
you-
we get creative
No,
with how we think about
yeah.
potentially trying to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know,
if it
that's-
works.
That's a very good expenditure of some of that $7 million.
All right, let's go out to the public for comment on this item. Ms.
So
Scanlon, anybody
Mayor,
on-
no hands are raised on Zoom.
Anybody in the council chamber wish to comment on this item? Oh, okay, seeing none, then, so I think we all agree that this is a really great idea. It's something we would like to see if we can get to some consensus of numbers and how we're going to fund it. And so I think, Sean, if you can just come back with us later when you have a handle on it and more than 40 minutes to think about it. But it's a great idea. No, it's a great idea. Yeah.
We'll talk about it a lot in one of the items coming up, but I think that all things being equal, and there's a lot of, you know what, I'm just gonna let it be until I get up there.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
yes, I could do that.
More to
Okay.
come later.
All right.
Thank you for indulging in
yes,
my
thank you.
question
Thank you,
before I'm
Chief.
bringing this forward. I
Okay,
appreciate it.
so don't go away. You're still up. Item 10B. Adopt Resolution 2022-85, approving the reclassification of a vacant position in the police department of a police officer to a police property and evidence technician and a police records clerk. Chief Alves.
Mayor and Council, this staff report, staff recommends City Council adopt a resolution approving the reclassification of a vacant police officer position in the police department to a property and evidence technician 1 or 2 and a police records clerk 1 or 2. And some technical background per chapter 2.16.050 of the Lincoln Municipal Code. City manager is a personnel officer for the city, and the task assigns under this duty are governed by the municipal code and the city's adopted personnel rules and regulations. Per these requirements, council shall allocate every position to one of the classes established by the classification plan. We strive to maintain proper staffing and deployment throughout our department, and we continually assess our staffing and deployment, and situations do arise where a reclassification is warranted, and this is one of those cases. Classifications can occur due to changes. The majority of job duties in a position are to be determined at a higher or lower classification level than are proposed. Organizational changes also require a look at this. New programs, technology, staffing can result in the need for amendments to the city's classification plan. And in this situation specifically, so in coordination with the HR department, we identified the following classification changes being necessary to ensure a fair and equitable classification plan, as well as ensure proper operational functions and record keeping. And that change would be to reclassify an existing police officer into a property and evidence tech and a police records clerk. The fiscal 21-22 operating budget authorized 4 additional police officer positions funded by Fund 101. And upon this authorization, we developed a 1-year deployment plan for all of our vacancies. There were 7 at the time. And the plan consisted of evaluating current department and city needs, structure and workload and supervisory span of control. And the plan is continuously evaluated with specific emphasis placed on forecasting for upcoming needs due to legislation requirements and staffing changes stemming from resignations or retirements. And through this, it was determined that these 2 areas, property and evidence and records, were lacking and needed some attention. The first area concerns property and evidence. The property and evidence unit consists currently of a single community service officer, CSO. The department needs with the CSO position has caused the duties to significantly change from their current job description. Originally, our CSOs, probably 12, 15 years ago when we started that program, they were field CSOs who went out and took reports. Their job description is very broad. It's you tow cars, you take reports, you book property and evidence. That job description has never changed, but the responsibilities of that employee, we have 1 CSO left, of that employee have changed dramatically, and he's been assigned full-time to the property and evidence unit. So of the 9 or 10 items within his job description, 1 line is all he still does of that current job. So ultimately, that position of CSO, we need a property and evidence clerk working property and evidence and the CSO doing CSO work. And the second area of concern is the records unit. Currently, we have a senior dispatcher who has extensive records experience. She manages all of our department records. She divides her time between dispatch and records duties and often needs to work overtime to complete her records duties. And it's an incredibly inefficient approach, and the volume of records exceeds what's reasonable for one person to manage. Creating a records clerk 1 or 2 provides the extra staff needed to properly manage our records. By mid-2022, dispatch will be fully staffed, and the senior dispatcher who's in records part-time off and on will be able to be in there full-time. To be very clear, records are the core of the police department. Everything we do creates a record, and nearly everything is subject to a Public Records Act request. And those records need to be managed. And with the push for transparency and the broadening of PRAs and what's available and what we have to release, the workload is dramatically increased. Added to that are legislative changes that require more in-depth monthly reporting to the Department of Justice, and the Racial Identity Profiling Act, RIPA, those requirements that we have to report frequently as well. Also seen an increase in Public Record Act requests for body-worn camera footage, which often requires hours of review to redact and confirm that we can release this portion of video. And with all of these legislative mandates and body-worn cameras and what's expected of us, state funding did not accompany any of these requirements. The burden of funding lies solely on us. So creating these positions as a 1 and 2 gives us the flexibility to hire candidates with experience in their respective areas. Though it is acceptable to hire an entry level, our preference would be to hire somebody with some experience that can bring to the department. And though if you're going to hear anything, please hear this. Though these proposals will eliminate a vacant patrol officer position, we're confident patrols at a level that's acceptable for the time being. This was essentially a risk analysis. Where were our weaknesses? And it was glaring that our weaknesses were in our property and evidence and in our records. And the exposure that it's not there, but the potential exists with the staffing levels that we have. The exposure is great. Patrol is stable right now. No one wants to give up a police officer position. It made me sick to my stomach to consider this, but the need in these other 2 areas was so great, I was willing to make that sacrifice. So in conclusion, let me talk about the fiscal impact. So the fully burdened cost of a police officer is $174,406, and with the proposed positions, the records clerk is just over 91, and property and evidence tech is just over 97. That's fully burdened. So the increase annually, you're looking at about just over 15,000 annually to convert the 1 sworn position into 2 non-sworn positions. And if we were to hire tomorrow, which we're not going to be able to do, it would be a fiscal impact of just shy of $4,000 for the remainder of the fiscal year, which is well within our salary savings that we've experienced this year. So minimal budgetary impact, great impact for exposure and risk reduction within our department. So to conclude, we recommend that this will assist with proper job alignment, clarify some job description issues, get the pay scales where they should be for the current jobs, and it will give the additional staffing in these 2 units that greatly needed. One thing I forgot to mention is we still will retain the CSO position. That will still be there. And a bit of the trade-off of converting the officer spot is that will now be a true field CSO. So that CSO will be going out, working in the field, taking the low-level reports, the petty thefts, towing the vehicles, the thing that officers are required to do now that takes up their time. But the CSO, who will be probably working 410s or something like that, will be able to take care of that workload and take the burden off the officers, which will free them up to go do more higher level sworn items. So with that, I welcome any questions or clarifications that you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, real quickly. So just so I'm clear, the 1 remaining position that you spoke of a minute ago that it needs to be filled, that one is going to be this?
No, I'm
Okay.
sorry. We have technically
2. Okay,
It's a bit of a shell game, unfortunately.
Okay.
We have a vacant sergeant position right now that
Okay.
we will be filling,
okay,
which would then create a void in patrol. So that would be the position that we're looking to
Gotcha.
staff this with.
okay. And then your person who's dispatched that does records going to move over and do records full time?
She will, yes, her job description allows her to do full-time records duties, and dispatch staffing will be to the point where it is perfectly comfortable for her to do that full-time.
Okay, great. All right. question. Go ahead.
A question down that path.
Mhm.
So one of the new dispatchers that have, you aren't completely filled there, right? You still.
Yeah, we have one dispatch vacancy. We have a person in back.
So there will be a dispatch supervisor other than this now records person, or is she still going to be
Yeah,
supervisor?
yes, we still have the record supervisor, I'm sorry, the dispatch supervisor who we currently have that job and it's filled. And she right now oversees dispatch and records, and she will remain as an off the floor supervisor, but available to fill in when needed. I don't think I
Okay.
answered your question.
Confused me.
This will allow us to have, this will give us absolutely sufficient staffing, having the record supervisor be off the floor, meaning working in the office, having the dispatcher work full-time records, and then with the remaining dispatch staff, we have great coverage for the rest of the time.
That answered it. Simpler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Few thoughts, I guess, Matt. But first of all, you know what your department needs more than we do. If this is where you feel that we can best spend our resources, then I'm going to go ahead and support that. Curiosity, on the last discussion we had about a POP team, the fully burdened rate of an officer was listed as 146,206. This one, we're saying 174,406.
That's a great
What is
question.
the
There-
fully burdened rate of a police officer?
Off the top of,
The number you gave is a classic number, I would almost guarantee.
Okay.
So it's 146 if it's an entry level. If it's a lateral, and they're in the system in PERS, it's probably more like 176.
That's a number that's floated around on me through the years, and inevitably, when I quote it to somebody, then the next person that talks uses a different number, and it's a bit confusing.
I call them expensive police versus less expensive.
Ah, okay.
Cadillacs or Chevrolets.
Okay. Then the other question, just for my own understanding, is your current CSO going to step into that role full-time, or are they going to stay with evidence and property and you bring in a new CSO?
we are going to be experiencing retirements very soon within the department.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Madam Mayor.
No, thank you very much. I have no questions.
No, you've given me every reason to support whatever you bring forward. You know, the needs of our community, you know, the needs of your department more than we ever could. And I appreciate the thoroughness of your report. And the only comment I have is that it feels really nice to hear you say that you have all you need for dispatch, because there's a lot of years where that was like the big concern.
All I need is a big statement. More, we can certainly use more, but.
But like, you're not at critical,
we are-
like,
Wait, let
oh
me
my
retract that.
gosh.
We are comfortable.
Right.
So he's clawing that back
Right.
now.
You know what? I'll take
Comfortable.
what you said
Yeah.
before because it made me happy.
Okay.
So we need an
get you,
action.
we
on
get
this?
you.
All right.
Good, okay. All right, let's go out for public comment on this item.
Yes, none on Zoom. I don't see any in chambers.
Okay, none on Zoom? Oh, okay. And nobody in the chamber? Okay, all right. Well, then if council does not have any more questions or comments, I will entertain a motion to adopt resolution 2022-85.
I will happily make the motion to approve.
Second,
Okay, roll call, please.
Yes, thank you. Councilmember Joyner,
Yes.
Councilmember Silhai,
yes.
Councilmember Carl Skint,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Mayor Andriata.
Yes, all right, good job. Okay, this next item is one that I've been waiting for a very long time. Adopt resolution 2022-86, authorizing the Lincoln Fire Department staffing strategy and directing budget appropriations from the available standard allowance revenues and public safety tax share fund to execute the associated staffing strategy. And City Manager Sean Scully will give the report.
All right, thank you. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
Okay, so thank you to the Facebook page for Lincoln Fire Department, because I ripped off a bunch of their pictures for this presentation. And that one in particular, oh, it's not up yet. You see it?
No,
No.
Oh, okay, one moment.
So apparently the fire guys' pictures don't post.
Small copier.
That it is, right. There we go.
We good?
It's black. Now we're getting there.
All right, so while we're waiting for that, I can just sort of set the table here. So one of the things that was brought up to me when I first started from all 5 electeds was, boy, we really need to do something about our fire department staffing levels. And you didn't really need to say that because it's self-evident. Running 3 stations with mostly 2 folks on shift per station was maybe appropriate 30 years ago, 40 years ago. These days, times have changed and responsibilities for fire departments have shifted and changed over that time. And so the question was, what do we do with limited resources and an awful lot of ground to make up? And so the city sometime before I got here applied for a SAFER grant. We didn't get it. Newsflash, we're not likely to ever get it here for a variety of reasons. And so thinking a little outside the box, we came up with this concept of self-funding for a limited period of time positions that we have the intention to absorb after a certain period, which I'll get into in a moment. While I have a little more time to burn, what I'll tell you is that you're not going to hear me use the term grant tonight. And Nita, our new finance director, pointed out to me that you can't grant money that you already have to use yourself. So we're self-funding, that's what we're calling it, out of this. And you're also not going to hear me use, except for maybe briefly, the term ARPA, because this funding now is what we're calling standard allowance revenues. We have now taken them sort of out of that box and have placed them in to our into a special fund for a specific purpose. And under ARPA, the standard allowance allows a much more flexibility in allocating those dollars towards what they call general government services. And there's probably no more general government service than police and fire protection. So we feel very confident about that. In addition to that, and I'll get into it again here in a moment, there's a direct connection to the pandemic and this concept. I think it's safe to say that the fire department, more than any other city department, has been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. They are the ones that go into the homes of people that are ill. They are the ones that are responding to emergencies for people that are ill. And certainly during the early and mid days of the pandemic, that wasn't the case for a variety of the rest of our staff here, maybe except for the police department. So are we okay, I think, or, oh, still no? Okay, no worries. I'm gonna just start with history because it's boring anyway, and we'll just get through it, and then you can see the pretty pictures in a moment. So here's the history. City's awarded $11.5 million in ARPA funding. Council begins to have some strategy discussions about that money in fourth quarter of 2021 through about the first quarter of this year when I arrived. 4 programs are discussed initially. Business grant assistance, which is on the streets, and we have, Tom's not here tonight, but we have, I think, almost 30 applications now.
He told
50?
us tonight 50.
Oh, geez. Wow.
And then he said he's going back out to go back through again and keep beating the pavement.
So that program will be depleted quickly and for good reason. Nonprofit assistance, which we've discussed a little bit tonight. Also had some discussion about mental health and community resources. And then as important as all the rest of those, fire department funding. And then on March 8th, the council held a workshop to consider the concept of self-funding fire positions out of the standard allowance for a 3-year period. You then requested that I come back with options of 6, 9, and 12. That was the night that you, I think it was sort of an off the cuff question to Chief, which one of the options is do you like? And he kind of gave a similar answer tonight that, of course, more the better, but 9 minimally, which would allow us to assign those bodies amongst 3 stations. On March 22nd, council chose the standard allowance and passed a resolution to that effect. So that is effectuated as of today. And in the meantime, we've been compiling personnel training and equipment costs, as well as associated financial analysis of, oh, sweet, we're up. Okay. Hold on a second. Let me just show you the picture. There we go. See, it was worth it. Oh. Oh, no, it's going to take a while. Oh, there we go. Okay, so that's all that for that. Okay. I was really excited because of, okay, so here, yeah, next slide, like 3 slides down to where you start to see numbers. Keep going. One more. There we go. Stop. Okay, so here's the dollar figures. Roughly 2.1 for 6 firefighters, 9, 3.1, and 12, 4.2. These include salary, benefits, training, pre-employment costs, screening, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot more to it than just the living, breathing body that you bring in. Next slide. Here's some assumptions and additional considerations. For the purposes of this exercise, we're assuming primarily entry-level, non-lateral positions, but we do have some flexibility there. So obviously, we're fortunate enough to lure some lateral applicants over, then that number that you saw on the last slide will raise a little, but not outside of the bounds of what we call basically a 5 to 10% standard deviation. The hire process would be prioritized. We'd start it right away. I've already been meeting with Veronica about this being priority 1. They hit the streets. We have to obligate our funds by December, all of our funds in 50% increments over a certain period of time. The last increment has to be obligated by December 1st of 24 and must be spent by the end of 26. Already talked about that bullet, and then already talked about the other bullet. So we'll move on to the next slide. So again, significant increase to the fire department personnel allows for improved response and service to the community, really. This is what it's all about. It's not only about bringing our staffing levels up to closer to industry levels. I'm careful about that because that's a changing metric, but really what it's about is providing a better service to our community, and gives us the ability to manage increased response needs, which we may see if things continue with future waves of COVID-19. Having more people on a truck when you go to a call improves safety. It's the same thing, similar to what the chief said. When you have more bodies on a call, there's better safety for the personnel involved because they're able to cover each other and watch each other's backs. And then the other component that's just a reality is the more folks that you have on board, the expectation from Chief and I have discussed this at length, at least from my office, and I assume from the city council's office, is that we are able to realize some overtime savings as a result of being able to use when you only have 18 to 19 bodies covering 24/7 shifts over 3 different stations, it's very difficult to find any way to cover that doesn't include overtime. It won't eliminate overtime. It's not going to significantly reduce it to a level where we can all of a sudden pay for these new folks in 3 years, but it will help the overall budget. So let's move on to the next slide. So the model we've come up with is 90% of the cost that you saw on the previous slide are funded out of our standard allowance revenues for a 3 fiscal year period. That time frame is a little bit transitional because the reality is even though if we want to hire 9 firefighters tomorrow morning, that's never how it works in recruitment. Some people don't make it through the process. Some folks don't make it through probation. Some folks can't qualify for a variety of reasons. And so if we could get 9 on immediately, that would be great, but very likely it won't occur. It'll happen over a number of months, with some failures and some successes. And then 10% match to be funded out of Fund 101, Public Safety Property Tax Revenues, which is the renegotiated property tax share, primarily for the 12 Bridges tax rate area. And I am going to dive into that in a little bit more detail in a moment, but let's head on to the next slide. Here's what it looks like by fund. I won't go through the numbers, but you can see that depending on the strategy you choose, Fund 101 picks up more of the costs, while ARPA's contribution is less than the slide you saw in the very beginning. And next slide. The hiring process is dynamic, as I mentioned. It's going to require regular reporting back to City Council on the status of the staffing strategy program. So you'll be seeing this on agendas for a while, kind of letting you know where we're at, how things are going, have we got all of the folks on board, what's the budgetary impact. And we're going to have to be doing an ongoing review and allocation process within Fund 101. So real quickly on Fund 101. Initially, the review that we had done for Fund 101 was how we generally would review revenues for any other purpose, like secured property taxes, for example. You simply look at revenues received, you make some assumptions about increases for the following year, and usually they're very conservative, a couple percent here or there, and then you budget that for the following year. And it's a pretty tried and true method that, in public finance, they call it incremental budgeting, and it's what most government agencies do. The difference between that and what we should be doing for Fund 101 is this. Fund 101, when that tax rate area deal was made, was generally undeveloped at that time. Just tonight, you approved, I believe, at least one, maybe 2 maps for the 12 Bridges area. There are 2 other maps that were approved a couple meetings ago. And then if you ever drive in that area, you can see wires and pipes sticking out of the ground almost everywhere and lots of homes going up. So if you think about how property taxes is evaluated, let's say that a lot is assessed at a standard single family lot after mapping is assessed at $30,000 value. There's no value to it. It's just dirt with maybe some curbs and sidewalks in the front. That is what goes on to the tax rolls initially. And so the 1% the city and county typically fight over is what you receive. The difference in this case is we have received a vastly different tax sharing agreement for this little area. And when that lot at $30,000 develops and the home then sells for $600, $650, $700, in those areas, the city is receiving the majority of that revenue for the term of this agreement. And so what I think you're going to see in that fund is a fast forward compared to what we would have seen if that agreement had never existed, because currently in Lincoln, within at least the next 24 months, that area will be the primary growth area for us until Village 7, 1 is starting to get rolling. But that area in particular, just because of what's going on with development, is really moving. And so year 1, we collected about, not under oath here, but roughly $400,000 or $500,000 in that account. It went up to, I think, roughly 1.5 million the following year. We are budgeting, I think, 2.1 in, is that right, Nita? Does that sound right? 2.1 in 101? I'm high, or we're budgeting 1.5 and it was at 1.1. Is that what it is? Yeah. Yeah. So Yeah, so she said we received one last year. We're budgeting, I think, 1.2. I think that what's going to happen though, and it's very difficult for us to do this because homes pop up in bunches. And property taxes received roughly a year after, you don't realize the revenue until about a year after it's closed, it's gone on to the tax rolls. But I think that one of the things we're going to do for council so that we can really get a good absorption strategy, which I'll get to in a moment, is we're going to go back through all of those maps and approved projects. And we happen to know, because they're permitted downstairs, where each one of those projects is in various mapping and build phases, and get some reasonable assumptions to give you an idea that in 23, 24, we expect it to jump to 1.8 or 2, in 24, 25, 2.5, let's say, so that we can really start to plan for the absorption rate for whichever of these options you choose. But the good news is that because of that agreement, I think that we have some tools to be able to actually make that happen in the next 3-year period, provided that what Mayor Pro Tem Joyner said earlier does not happen, and we don't see some sort of sliding occur. But even if that occurs in 2 years, this area is going to build very quickly. And so I think they'll mostly be on the books by that point. Okay, absorption, next slide. The way that we're going to have to, so here's the concern, obviously, for everybody in the room. It doesn't do any good for us to hire 6, 9, or 12 firefighters and then turn right around in 3 fiscal years and say, oops, we can't afford to have those bodies on the books any longer. And then we're back to where we started. With that said, I think that it's highly unlikely, depending on the scenario you choose, that we're not going to be able to absorb most, if not all, of those bodies based on the revenue growth we see in the general fund, development that we know is occurring currently and is coming. And I'm talking about Set B, I'm talking about Village 1, I'm talking about Village 7. And all of those things combined make me feel very comfortable that absorption is possible. Now, the question is, what level is possible? And I can't tell you. But I could give you some educated guesses, which I'm going to do. I think that the purpose of this program needs to be continuously evaluated and continuously planned for. It can't be one of those things that we prove tonight and we come back in 3 years and say, here's where we're at. It's something that we have to be monitoring every step along the process. And as I said, at the bottom point there, we're going to be returning Fund 101 projection and some more fiscal planning purposes. That's actually a bit of a heavier lift than even this was, because it really requires us to sit down and do some math. Fortunately, Nita's pretty good at math. So, okay, so direction. Here are the options that were requested and are provided. Oh, sorry. Yeah, next slide. And what we need tonight is really some direction on which of these to go. As I mentioned, I'm very honest. I do not see a way that absorption of 12 firefighters is possible in a 3-year period. You have to remember that even if you decide to go with the 9 firefighter option, when you think about how many you actually have working in those positions currently, you would be essentially staffing up that department by 40 to 50% with the stroke of a pen. Never been done before, as far as I know, in Lincoln, at least in this kind of a method. And so it's a real statement, and it's an important statement to the fire department and to the community that we're prioritizing this service, and we're going to work over the next 3 years to make it a permanent sort of solution. So obviously, if your question was, Sean, what do you think? Where would you land if you wanted to give us 100% certainty that we could absorb these firefighters in 3 years? My answer would be, I can't give you 100% certainty, but I would say that at a 6 firefighter option, I feel 95% confident that that's doable over a 3-year period. It would be similar to if you gave me direction to find a way to fund firefighters at 2 more per year over 3 years, we can make that work. I feel similarly about the 9 firefighter option. Probably not at 95%, but I probably feel I'm in the 75 to 80% range, just based on the numbers that we spent a lot of time with in the budget. And again, on the 12 firefighter option, I think it's highly unlikely that we're able to absorb that many. So that is my general analysis. I think there might be one more slide. Is there? Oh, yeah, one more slide. So this is a difficult item, and I'm not pretending it's not, but it's also a bold step. And so sometimes bold steps require a little bit of a risk assessment, or you never really, move the needle. The way I feel about it, staff and I have discussed quite a bit, is the question really for us is, if we're going to provide the service in a way that we know we should, then it's going to require a bold action. This is a bold action. It's not the only thing that we could do, but I think it's the thing we could do that could have the most impact in the shortest period of time. So that's my presentation. Now feel free to shoot holes in me and I'll do my best to answer.
Thank you, Sean. Really appreciate that. Okay, I'm gonna save my comments and we'll start with Dan. Go ahead.
Why don't you start with somebody else?
Okay, well,
Well,
we have a
because you always
rotation.
start
I'm
with
fine
me.
with that. I'm fine with that. We'll start with Bill.
Sure.
I go down the rabbit hole too fast.
I don't want,
Yeah, you do.
Sean, I don't want to shoot you down. I appreciate the analysis. The question I have is, putting nine new firefighters, is that going to guarantee we're going to have 3 per shift?
Chief, you want to address that? You're the ops guy.
Yes, adding 9 mathematically allows us to have 3 on per shift. So you have a captain, an engineer, and a firefighter on all 3 shifts, 24/7.
That brings us up to, the proper staffing for responding to a fire, a residential fire.
Yeah, 4 on is considered standard, but 3 is a huge step towards that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, my question first is for Chief. You referenced earlier how there are some things that you do draw a hard line on how many numbers you need to make it actually worth the while. What is it on this?
9.
That's my question for now.
Mayor Pro Tem Joyner.
Sure. So Matt, just for clarification, we go for 9 theoretically fully staffed. Somebody calls in sick. We still have to go to OT to fill that slot. So fully staffed is.
Yeah, there are operational discussions that need to happen. There are staffing rules that we need to assess. Ideally, you have a firefighter call in sick, you backfill that with overtime. But there is certainly some give and take here, and that would be my goal, would be to backfill that with overtime. However, worst case scenario, okay, you're 2-0 for the day. We don't want to do that. We want to avoid that at all costs, but it's just going to take some more calculations and just some discussion operationally. But yeah, ideally it would be continuing to keep 3-0 on.
Mayor, can I ask a piggyback question to
Go
this? That was one of the questions that I actually wanted to ask. So if we're able to give you 9, how much in overtime percentage decrease do you think that we could expect to experience? 30%, 40%?
Did you run those numbers?
Well, I know what I was going to challenge you with.
Go for it.
It seems to me that if we have the ability, because again, you really shouldn't, running a fire department or fire station that's running calls with 2 bodies, been doing it for some time now. It's like Chief said, we're not ever going to want that to happen, but this gives us at least the flexibility if we have a situation where somebody's, maybe an unexpected injury or somebody has a pre-scheduled vacation where we can actually shift bodies for a change. Because if you shift bodies on a 2-0 station, you have 1 person, and now you don't have really any operational capability in that station. So we are looking, I would like to see a decrease of somewhere between 20 and 35%, within that. And we'll just have to evaluate it as we're moving forward. It may be that that practically and feasibly that isn't how it's working out in the field, but I don't think that we should walk into it with any assumptions that I think it's fair for us to walk into it with the assumption that if we're adding this many officers to a department in basically a one-time action, that we need to see some overtime decrease.
Yeah, I asked because in my mind, if I'm, if he's only 75% sure that we'll be able to sustain this in a 3-year period on 9, but a 95% on 6, but you're saying 6 is not helpful, it's not feasible. If you can guarantee, or guarantee is probably a strong word, aim for a specific percentage of reduction in overtime, which is very expensive, that comes off our books and goes towards being able to actually sustain those positions and plan for them
Right.
in that 3-year period.
And I would commit to if you delegated this decision to the city manager of, we want to see this much reduction, him and I could have the conversations, and then in talking with our staff, come up with minimum staffing guidelines. And that would help predict, and that would truly limit. Obviously I don't want to do that, but if that's what it's going to take to be able to get these bodies on, then it's worth it in the long run.
Obviously, with public safety being the first priority, right?
Correct.
If like it's just not possible because it's not possible, well, then that's a reality. But if it's
Correct.
possible to be able to realize that, to be able to make us be able to afford it, it seems like that could get us there,
Yeah.
or at least partially get us there.
Yeah, and I think the other component to overtime that gets lost sometimes is people think about the money that's earned during overtime, but it's also the time away from family. It's the canceled vacation. It's the inability to do something because you have a mandatory shift you have to cover. And at least for the morale of the department, having the ability to be able to spread that over a number of new bodies is a pretty big deal. I'll let them to speak to that, but I'm assuming that that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and if I can just give an example. So on the police side of the house, so our minimum staffing is a sergeant and 2 officers. Right now, nearly every shift is scheduled 3 officers and a sergeant. So you can lose that 1 officer and still be at your minimum staffing. So we would establish minimum staffing rules and stick with that.
Yeah, so no, it's fine. Really more of an observation than anything else. I've been on the council for 14 years. When I came on, we had only recently, and Tolan, correct me if I'm wrong, we had only recently gone from kind of a combined, I think we had 4 full-time firefighters and a volunteer force, and then stood up a professional fire department. Recession hits. Plans kind of go on hold. I think we lost 3 or 4 to other agencies at the time. And we've been pretty much there this whole time. And in the time I've been on the council, this is the greatest opportunity that we have had to have a real impact on staffing up the fire department. If anything good has come of COVID, it's this. So I'm going to very, very happily endorse authorizing 9 firefighters to join our force.
All right, Dan, let's go down the rabbit hole. Or maybe not,
Maybe not.
maybe not.
My feeling is you go with 9 or you don't go. What I want everybody on, all of my colleagues to understand is that I think what Sean is saying, and let's say it's an 85 or a 90%. What he's saying, if we dedicate all of the rest of Fund 101, which is the incremental tax sharing, this is the end of hiring for using that money. I just want everybody to understand that. That's why
I
My
don't think,
question
is
about
that
the
what
2.
you're proposing though? Because
no, that's the way the numbers work out.
Yeah, well, so
Theoretically.
I mean, it kind of comes down to, as we absorb, how do we absorb, right? if Fund 101 is healthy enough to take a lot of that burden, then what what Councilmember Carlson said is absolutely correct. That said, the general fund should experience similar growth. And so we're going to,
Right.
but that's a balance, right? Because you have other things, like we talked about the chief's positions earlier tonight. There's certainly a variety of other things that the general fund
Yeah.
supports. So
But that's normal, normal supported, normal property tax. This 101 thing is a one-time shot for so many years. And, with the numbers that he's been tossing around, understanding they need to be fully fleshed out, but we're taking 100% of that number to do this job using the ARPA money, and all the ARPA money does
Standard
is
allowance.
starts it.
Starts
I'm
it,
sorry.
Standard allowance.
Yeah, right.
Starts it, yeah.
All it does is allow us to do this earlier than we would have with 101.
So is there a reason why we have to dedicate the 101 funds to this? So here's where I have a problem with
Okay.
I have a problem with it, because when we talked at length, like, it feels like ad nauseum about that tax sharing agreement that took so long to get and was hard fought for. We did, if my recollection is accurate, make a commitment to then Chief Lee and Chief Alves that there would be parity in those funds between the two departments. And I am 100% prepared to get them 9. I am not 100% prepared to dedicate all future Fund 101 dollars to fire without having complete buy-in from PD.
Well, we've,
Like, I'm not.
101, right? Hasn't it funded about 6 officers already?
Yeah, in my opinion, you have year 1 of 101 went to PD, year 2 is going to fire. I believe there's parity.
So I can vote that all future 101 goes to fund 9 positions in fire, and police is not upset.
There are
We've honored our agreement to you.
there are Fund 101 there's Fund 101 staff on the police department
Right,
now
on books now from that
that you're going to be paying for from 101
duty.
for the life of it. So you are still paying police and paying fire for the life of 101. We're just exhausting the
All right,
the
so-
101.
And I think the other component that's super important is that parity doesn't exist now, right? The police department is funded
Right.
and staffed at a very different level than the fire department is.
That's 100%.
And so I
Right.
think it's fair to say that, first of all, we have budgeted expenses and positions out of 101 now. They're
All
going
right.
to stay there. And it may be, if our assumptions are correct about revenue growth there, that you could have both.
I just want to make sure that we don't break, because we were we made a big point about it there. We had long lines of both officers in different times in both forces. We were very clear in our commitment, and I want to make sure that I honor that commitment. So as long as you feel like we've honored it, I'm excited to be able to vote for it. But I just want to make sure that we're taking care of both sides of the house.
And I didn't say that to say anything bad. or
No, it was
indicate
a great
about
clarification.
9.
Right.
You just talked about 2 more officers earlier tonight. That's
Right.
what got my attention.
All right, let's.
It's a fund
It's done.
that has got a purpose, and we'll only use it for that purpose. But if we do this tonight, we have, I think.
Yeah, filled it. Okay.
And I think that's really important to point out.
Yep.
And I think that where this takes us is that place we discussed, came from Sean, of being comfortably uncomfortable.
I'm very comfortable. Yep.
As
Okay.
long
And
as
it-
Chief
and
tells
there-
me he's comfortable with it, and
And
then
Mayor,
I'm
one
good.
more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to make it really clear, because if someone plays back this video in 3 years, I just want to be really clear. That
Someone will.
I don't, yeah.
It might be me.
I don't want to hire anyone here at the city of Lincoln that we don't get to see to retirement one day. That said, if things change, everybody here has to adjust, including myself. And so I'm just making it really clear that we're going to make the best financial decision for the city. And at this point, I think this is a sound decision to move forward.
So what I would ask with the additional firefighters with any new officers is that we make them aware of the conditions under which their revenue streams come, so that they can make the decisions they need to make.
Yes, sir. Yep.
All right. Our public has been very patient, so let's, is there anybody on Zoom, Ms. Scanlon, that would like to speak?
We only have a couple folks left. I don't see any hands
Okay.
raised, Mayor.
Let's go to the council chambers. Any of you would like to come to the microphone and speak? You guys have been sitting there very patiently. Come forward. Thank you. Hi.
Hello, my name's Chris Wade. I am a Rockland firefighter for the past 10 years. I'm the current local president for the Rockland firefighters. And I'm really happy to see that you guys are entertaining this proposal. I have friends and family that live in Lincoln, and I have a lot of friends that work here with the Lincoln Fire Department. And I wanted to speak today because Lincoln is the only fire department in the region that I regularly respond with that has 2O staffing. And it's very difficult for them, I know, for them to do their job and get it done. And as firefighters, we value really highly the ability to be effective and do what we're supposed to do. Like the council member said, it's all about public safety, right? So, you know, we want Lincoln to have parity with other surrounding cities and to be able to be effective and help people when they have emergency medical situations and with their fires. So I'll say also that the three, if hiring 9 will get us, you know, hopefully 3O staffing. And I hope that's the minimum staffing that the department will accept. It's extremely difficult to try to go from 1 day or 3, another day or 2. There's a huge safety component, not just for their physical safety, you know, but it's a mental safety as well. It's extremely stressful knowing that you're not as effective as you can be. You can't help somebody as effective. So I'll just leave you at this. The citizens of Lincoln, they deserve the same level of care and response that the city of Roseville, the city of Rockland, and South Placer receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And I would agree with you. The citizens of Lincoln do deserve that. All right. Anybody else in the council chamber would like to speak? Go ahead. Thank you.
I wasn't even here for this, but I'm just curious. It comes out to $320,000 per firefighter. Can anyone break that down for me? The reason I'm asking is it's just I'm just curious about it because that's your starting base. So over time, it's going to be more. So if you're talking about your revenues, then that certainly is going to get much greater than that. And also I'm just curious, like honestly, that's higher than most physicians make. So I'm just curious how 320,000 per firefighter.
Yeah, that's over a 3-year period.
Over 3 periods. Okay, that makes much more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was
And
like, I
I'm
don't
all
think
for having
that's
more-
right.
I'm all for having more firefighters.
We're out there going, hey, we wish we
But I'm
made
just
that
looking
much
going,
money.
Oh my gosh.
April's like,
320,000.
hey, where do I get on that?
So I'm all for having more firefighters.
Thank you,
I'm just
Dr.
wondering,
Ellis.
like, gosh, how's it working?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
That makes more sense.
Yes, thank you.
So when you roll on Dr. Ellis's house, no harm, no foul, right,
Yeah,
guys?
that's right. That's right. That's right. Okay, anybody else? All right. So we'll bring it back to the council. Does anybody else have another comment or question before I finish up?
You know, I think any risk, financial risks that we're looking at on these decisions we make, I believe a higher risk is inflation than depression.
Maybe,
I really, you know,
yeah.
inflation
One often
causes.
leads to the other.
Mhm,
One often leads to the other.
eventually, yeah. So, but anyway.
Anybody
that was
else?
just-
No? Okay. So first of all, I just want to, I'm super grateful for the council being willing to have this conversation, entertain this idea that I think it came from the fire department actually. And then we brought it to the city manager. And so we're not calling it a grant, but that was the original idea, to fund, to self-fund using the, not calling ARPA, but standard allowance revenue. It's a brilliant idea, along with the Fund 101. So I'm super grateful to the council for being willing to engage with this and to work through the details, and for Sean and staff and Nita and everybody to crunch the numbers to bring this forward so we can make an educated and informed decision and a responsible decision. Having said that, I want to reiterate what Sean said, because this is what has been resonating with me this whole time, is that, and what Mayor Pro Tem Joyner said, is that we have a very unique opportunity to do something here that we haven't been able to do in years. And it is imperative that we make that bold statement, that we make it known, because I know that individually, we all care about the fire department. We care about the public safety of this town. Otherwise, we wouldn't be sitting here. I know I wouldn't be. And we need to make it known that we're going to put our money where our mouth is. And we can say all day long that, you know, we care about our residents, we care about public safety, we're trying, and we have been, but I think that time is done, and it's done trying, and now we're going to do, because we have this unique opportunity, and we need to grab it, and we need to move forward, and we need to get you staffed. And I cannot tell you how excited I am that we're actually here at this moment. And it's time to make that bold statement. And I fully intend on supporting the 9 firefighters. And I appreciate those who have already said they're going to commit to that. And so let's get it done. So I am ready to entertain a motion.
So, Madam Mayor, it's
Yes.
unusual but allowable. Why don't you go ahead and make that motion?
I will be happy to. I will be happy to. All right. So I move that we adopt resolution 2022-86, authorizing the Lincoln Fire Department staffing strategy and directing budget appropriations from the available standard allowance revenues and public safety tax share fund to execute the associated staffing strategy and authorize the hiring of 9 firefighters.
Second.
Roll
Thank
call,
you.
please.
Yes, Mayor Andriotta.
100% yes.
Mayor.
Yes.
Councilmember Carlskin,
Yes.
Councilmember Lauritsen,
Yes.
and Councilmember Silhai.
Absolutely.
All right. Awesome.
I'm up next.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. Would anybody like to say anything now? Or are you guys just in shock? Well, before we move on, let me say one more thing that I wanted to say, then I forgot because I got it a little bit in my head. What I want to say to you, and if anybody's watching or department watches it after, or you can convey what I know that my colleagues feel the same way. I want to thank you, because you guys have stuck it out for years. You have stayed with us. You have done your job amazingly well with the staffing that you had. The 2, everybody knows that that's below standard. Everybody knows that that's unacceptable. And you know, to me personally, it's unbelievable that it's taken this long, but I understand why. So there's no criticism or blame. It's just, you guys have done an amazing job. And I am so thankful for your heart for the community, for your heart for each other, and that you have been willing to come back to the table and have a relationship with us, because I know in the past that there's been tension, there's been mistrust. I hope that we have been able to bridge that gap of trust. And I want to thank you. And I extend my deepest gratitude to the Lincoln Fire Department. You should be commended, and you have my heart and my loyalty, and I'm at your service. So thank you. Okay, all right. Did you want to say something? You were wanting to say something? No.
You were
Okay.
perfect.
All right. Okay, now the other one that we've been waiting for. Item 10D, airport workshop discussion. All right, Sean, go ahead.
Okay, this will be quite a bit less emotional, I think.
Yeah.
It's still pretty interesting.
I don't know. Paul has a lot of
Paul,
feelings
yeah,
about
That's
plans.
true, yeah.
I do, Dr. Ellis does.
Yeah. Hi, Dr. Ellis. I put this picture up to start the presentation because I just wanted to point out that nothing has happened out there. That's the fuel replacement project, phase 1 that was completed. Phase 2 was the removal of old antiquated equipment. And so I just thought it was kind of neat because it's not always sort of in the narrative, but progress is made, just not at the clip that we would like it. And so tonight we're talking about how to make it such. So this is probably going to be a series of workshops that by the time we're done, you're going to be really tired of them. But when you're trying to untangle a knot that's built over many years, I think that it's important to start with something sort of broad. I'll give you some assessments that we've been able to make, first couple months here, and then just some ideas that have come up, and maybe a little request for some just soft direction about how to move forward. And then we'll be back with some more targeted info. But here, so whole picture: budget status, airport management, code and lease enforcement, leasing opportunities, economic development related to the airport, land sale adjacent to the airport, and then some short-term action items. Okay, so let's talk about the budget at the airport. Operational revenues, and this is a sneak peek for the budget you're going to see, estimated at 1.67 million. Of that, kind of interesting to see where that comes from. 426,000 or so is lease revenue, and about $850,000 in fuel revenue. The majority of what we collect, there's a variety of other small things, some small property tax and some other revenue sources, but the vast majority are those two categories. Estimated expenditures in 2022 is 1.53 million. So you see that it's many smaller general aviation airports are not running fund surpluses. They barely make it by. I can tell you because I've been involved in more than one. So the financial picture is actually not terrible. It just could be a lot better. These do not include FAA revenue and grants. Those are separate. The city receives some money from the FAA on a yearly basis for ops and projects. You all know about the ongoing debt of it was 6, but it's 5.9 million now. We pay a small or the airport pays a small payment to the general fund every year, about $140,000, which will be paid off sometime after we're all dead. But as I mentioned, I really do believe that significant opportunities exist for revenue growth. And some of this is just a function of prioritizing that work. Airport management, we have one full-time body out there and a part-time person who was at one time, I think, the airport manager, and has agreed to come back as a retired annuitant and work 960 hours a year to help us out. But very limited operational ability beyond typical working hours. That's led to a variety of operational issues, whether it be not really having a point person on leasing, restricted customer service timelines. I can't recall who told me. I spent a lot of time these days talking about the airport, but I was told about a story about a jet, as Mayor Pro Tem Joyner, that came into Lincoln's airport. I think it was on a Saturday, and he cycled down his engines. And then he realized that we didn't have a mule to pull him to the fuel island. So he had to refire up the engines to drive over to the fuel island. And I don't know anything about jets, but Mayor Pro Tem Joyner said it's very expensive.
And then shut them down again.
Yeah.
And then cycle them again.
Yeah.
$5,000 worth of fuel just to solve a problem that we should have solved with services in our airport.
So this is and we're talking about a couple hundred yards.
And guess who's never coming back to our airport again?
So that's, it's a anecdotal but important example. And code enforcement, lease management, we're going to talk about that, and then some maintenance issues. And then, at some point, in one of these subsequent discussions, we're looking into a variety of different management options. I have a short-term one that I'm going to present during budget of how I think we can really improve service there by shifting around some staff resources. But it's probably not a long-term solution. And I think that at some point we need to be serious about, there's really going to be two options. It all is based on revenue growth. So if you can grow revenue, you can make the decision to have these services provided in-house if you like, or you can farm them out. There are many different companies that manage airports as a profession, sort of like we outsource the wastewater treatment plant to Stantec, similar kind of scenario. And so it may be time to look at that. And I want to make sure that the full-time staff that know that are out there now, that does not mean anything to do with their jobs. I feel very bad. They mentioned to me that it's sort of disheartening to hear that every so often. We're going to find a way to make sure that we retain our employees we have. Okay, so code enforcement and lease enforcement. Christine and I have talked a lot about this, and it is a pickle. As I'm sure Dr. Ellis would tell you, or our city treasurer would tell you, some hangars, maybe many hangars, are not being used for aviation purposes. They're being used as storage, non-permitted businesses. At one time, there was, it may still be the case, there was people out there that had a lot of sports cars that they were, couldn't fit on their home, I guess. And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. If there's no enforcement, this is a very cheap storage option compared to what you would pay, at a storage facility. We have some unpermitted outdoor storage. We have not a lot, but some payment delinquencies. And one of the things that we tried, just as we try to wrap our heads around this issue, is Christine kind of led a little targeted code enforcement effort towards one hangar where we had a plane that was non-operational. And the provisions of our lease are actually very positive to the city in terms of being able to act fairly quickly, if we prioritize that activity. And so short term, that I don't think we need direction because it's simply something we should just be doing. We're going to be continuing to do some targeted code enforcement to try to see if we can get substantial compliance. And, for every tenant that either cleans up their act and becomes a vibrant member of that community, that's great. For every tenant that decides they don't want to deal with it and they leave, great, because there's a list of people that would love to lease those hangars and fly their planes and hopefully buy fuel from us. Leasing opportunities, new hangar builds. So the reason I put in parentheses there, jet hangars, is that there's a real financial advantage and incentive for the city to try to facilitate new hangar builds that are for jet type aircraft, because jet fuel, when we sell it at our facility, we get the markup that we get on that product is significantly higher than it is for general aviation fuel. And so a few of those types of users really could move the needle from a revenue perspective in a meaningful way. Addition of small hangar space, that's been discussed many times in the past. Options to contract leasing services. So one of the ideas we've discussed internally is it's really difficult for staff to have, especially mine and Christine's office and a lot of the folks that work in public works, we all have lots of duties. And so sometimes when you get a request for a lease, $400 a month lease, sometimes that doesn't make it up to the very top of the priority pile. And so we've discussed that maybe a more efficient method would be to contract with a professional to manage the leasing out there. And I don't know what that looks like, but it's just an idea that we've brainstormed. Partnership opportunities with local businesses. We've been approached by a number of local business people and corporations that are interested in either new hangar builds or other partnerships out there, which I think, again, it's a function of not neglecting the asset by seizing those opportunities and bringing them forward to council. And so I had held off on a couple of those opportunities simply because I wanted to come here and have this conversation and hear some feedback from you first, which has been slightly frustrating to some folks. But after tonight, unless I hear otherwise, you're going to start to see some more substantive considerations for council that are beyond what a staff level person could approve that would need to come here. Airport related economic development opportunities. So there's a number of RFP options that we can look into, that a number of there's models that other airports have done to build business out there. I've already kind of talked about partnerships with local companies, and then partnerships for cost sharing on value added infrastructure projects. The one that you hear about from anybody that's a pilot is that our pilot's lounge is like the equivalent of like a single wide trailer.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, with a vending machine that has nothing in it or something. So I think we could do better. And I think, and apparently, and it wouldn't have occurred to someone like me that's not an aviation enthusiast, but it's a very important amenity to an airport.
So the story behind that is pilots typically, especially on charter flights, are the ones who decide where they're going to land. They want to land somewhere where they've got nice amenities while they sit and wait for their client to return. We don't have that. And so we are not high on a list of selected locations.
Yeah, if I would have had a teeny more time, I would have gone and grabbed a picture of it. But maybe that just would have been depressing.
No, it's already embarrassing enough. Let's just.
Okay,
well, yeah.
all right. Okay.
Throw up a picture of a homeless camp and you're about there.
Okay. Excess land sale option. So this is interesting. To dispel and eliminate any more conversation about selling the airport. That ain't happening. It's a very expensive process to decommission an airport. Let's not even go there. However, there's 84 acres on the east side of this property that are not within the airport grounds. They were part of the original 600 and some odd acre quick claim lease deed rather, that was given to the city by the federal government. But Christine's looked into it. The preliminary analysis is that we can sell that property. And the questions I don't have the answers to yet, but I will, is how are those monies restricted, if at all? And to me, either way, let's say they're unrestricted, great. Then you can, debate how those are most efficiently spent. If they're restricted, great, because it gives you infrastructure dollars to do neat projects at the airport that add value. I would recommend that if we go down that road, that we do a master developer RFP. So you sell the property, but it's equivalent to saying, we're going to sell you this dirt, but you're going to develop it in a way that we have defined. And it's not restrictive in the sense that, they can't be creative and find their own users. It's that, look, we want these kinds of industrial shells. We'd like, sufficient parking. You're essentially able to condition the project before it becomes, and they walk into it eyes wide open, and so do you. And it's a very efficient way to sell valuable industrial land so that it gets used for the purpose that the council wants. Just in case you don't know, this area here, that's not working. This area here on here we go. Right here on the east side, rather, of the property. This is the 84 acres. Yeah. So, well, this is the last PowerPoint.
You would make a terrible weather person.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally, short-term action, and then we're just open to comments and some direction. Moving forward on strategic leasing, evaluation of a commercial leasing agent. Excess property evaluation, we'll dive in a little deeper on the title and what our options are there. Lease code enforcement, I already discussed that. And subsequent focused airport related workshops with council. So we'll drill down these issues to really meaty ones that you can give direction on. But this was the best we could come up with as a start to a pretty complex issue that's longstanding here. So look forward to any comments or questions you might have.
All right, thank you. So I think the reason why I always start over here is because when we were on Zoom, Melissa would just go through and do it in order. We don't have to do that. So we'll just open the floor. Anybody who has questions, comments, anybody go ahead, and then we'll go out for public. So
I'm happy to.
go ahead.
Yes to all of it. Let's get on with it.
Yes, let's get on with it. Yes, yeah. Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. I mean, we've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I know that the only question I do have though, Sean, and I know you'll bring things back is, we've met with several different people who are interested in helping develop the airport out there. So is that something that we're gonna, give them an audience to let them present? Or are you just gonna research all of that? How are we gonna do that?
I think that when I look back over the history of the airport, there's been a huge file on it. What is apparent to me is that opportunities come and they go. And so I think that if tomorrow, I have a few that are on my desk that are going to move forward, but if they're important enough that they can change the nature of the revenue situation out there, then I think they need to be here in front of you.
Yeah.
At least for a long enough period of time that we're now steady and we have a good management structure out there. Because I think it's important. I think that, if we're going to resuscitate the airport a little bit, then it needs to be in a public space like this.
I think what I would add to that, Sean, is opportunities come, they lay around, they receive no attention, no action, and then they go. That's on us. We can't be doing that any longer.
Mhm. Okay, do you guys have anything you want to say before I open it up? Dr. Ellis, yeah.
Ellis has to
And-
say,
and
it might change
Richard,
my
if he
comments
has-
or questions.
Dr. Ellis, did you, yeah, go ahead. You've been sitting here waiting, so we would like to hear what you have to say.
No, I just, I mean, I've spoken to pretty much everyone about this already and stuff. Aviation's near and dear to my heart and stuff. And I'll be honest, I'm just super happy that you guys are taking this so seriously and everything else as well. I think that, like I said, I've always been a big fan of the keep it simple sort of thing. And I think starting small, the airport, just small incremental changes can make a huge difference here. The hard part I think you're running into, and just in a little bit of the last couple of weeks here, just a small bit of enforcement you've done. There has been, this is the world's, Lincoln's greatest old boy network there right now, like I said, and there's quite a bit of backlash just from the small amount of code enforcement you guys have done, where like a friend of mine who used my hangars gotten verbally attacked several times already from this. So there was a lot of anger and stuff, because these are really hobby condos, right? It's a hobby condo out there.
Can I
But,
clarify when you say verbally attacked, not by staff, right?
No. by
Oh,
other
okay.
people.
You scared me for a
What's
minute.
No.
I was like, what is happening out there, Sean?
No. But it's
Okay.
it's an emotional thing for a lot of
I
people.
feel better
This has been
now.
going on for so long. So a lot of people, I think, feel entitled to what's
So
going
used to
on.
getting
out
away
there.
with it.
No, I got it. I just,
But
wanted
but
to
I
be
just want to
sure.
point out today about what the story about the jet. So there was a Premier jet. I actually landed at the airport today, and there was a Premier jet that landed. It came down, and actually I heard the person who was working in the facility today was trying to guide them in and stuff. The first place he told him to turn, he couldn't turn because some helicopter had randomly parked right there and he couldn't turn there. So he had to go down a different area, came back around, and then eventually landed there. And when people come in on these jets, what happens is they stay on the jet until the cars come out and get them, and then they leave, because that's what happens. No one wants to get out and walk around the airport. I'd be honest with you, the airport kind of is like, I feel like it's my daughter's bedroom, where I am constantly getting on her about. It's just, there's planes on the tarmac that have flat tires. They'll never fly again. I don't know if they're still paying the city. I probably would be highly doubtful if someone's paying the city for a plane that's never going to fly again. There's a boat in the main parking lot, right? There's a boat parked in the main parking lot, plus 2 other trailers, like we're talking cabin, the cabins on top there. I mean, that's in the main parking lot. I don't know how you don't, how does that get missed? You drive by it every day. So I guess there's, like I said, just small steps here, but, and all the time I've seen quite a few jets parking at the airport or fly in. I've never once seen a jet ever fuel at the airport. I never have. And I think that's part of the problem. So I have a Bonanza, which uses about 20 gallons an hour of 100 low lead fuel. So when talking about the jets, it's not just jets that use jet fuel. Also, there are some piston. Oops, am I too late?
No, keep going. It's
There
fine.
are some piston planes. Actually, there's turbine planes which have a propeller, which also uses jet fuel. So like a Piper Meridian will use 40 gallons of fuel. A Pilatus will use 70 gallons an hour of fuel. The Premier jet that landed today uses 140 gallons an hour of fuel, right? So at the prices there right now, that's over $1,000 an hour, right? And that's like a 40% profit to the city if they could just get that jet to fuel up, right? And that's where really the revenue comes. There's one hangar at the airport that would be considered a large jet or medium-sized jet hangar. There's only one. I checked it out today. It's got the doors. We kind of open up. The biggest problem is that most of the bigger hangars, the ones that you would park in, like a small jet or a Pilatus or one of those planes that uses the jet fuel, most of those are, I say most, there's a good portion that are not being used for aviation purposes. And like I said, if you could buy a hobby condo for $50,000 or $25,000 and pay a little bit of money to the city, that's the cheapest hobby condo you could ever buy. And that's what's a lot of them being used for right now. And it's like I said, it's, I'll be honest with you, I bought an airplane because I luckily had a connection, so I got in a hangar. If I didn't get a hangar, I would have never got a plane because I'm not going to park an expensive plane outside. And there's honestly, I feel bad that I got one because I know there's a long list of people looking for them. So it's just, I feel like we need some new blood into the aviation airport. Like the one we call the IA, it's a person who inspects people's work they do in their airplanes. He's like 85 years old. There's no other guy out there because no one else there's no people coming in the airports. There's no new blood coming in and doing this sort of things. So I'm just super happy, excited that the city is really taking this, seriously and getting on it and stuff. It's going to be a long, hard road, and it's not like something that's going to happen overnight and stuff. But I think there's some minimal changes that can happen. Like most airports, like I flew into St. George just the other day. I'm all over the place. I apologize. But I flew into St. George, and it's a smaller airport than us, but they have a beautiful FPO. It's for people to walk in there and stuff. They have designated parking for transient parking. So what happens usually you land at the airport, there's people who have the spaces who pay for them. And there's transient parking. If I flew to Napa today, they put me in transient parking and they'll charge me $10 to park there overnight. We'd have nothing as designated transient parking. So we really have to just small things like just cleaning up where people park, where they go, someone recording their tail numbers and saying, hey, and you don't even have to have someone out there. Someone just records their tail numbers and they'll just you just send them a bill. It's all in public file where their plane's located. You just send them a bill for $10, right? Just like little tiny things like that. It just helps and just makes it more professional. And I think that we just go a long ways to doing it. Like I said, outside my hangar, there's been a Jeep and a van that have been parked there for 6 months. I've never moved once. It's just,
The
Thank you.
pens
Really-
are working overtime here.
Yeah.
Have you noticed that?
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Really-
anyway, I just appreciate it. I mean, I'm just, like I said, really, obviously Sean's on top of it and all of the city council members and the mayor, you guys are really on top of this. I really appreciate it.
We'll really appreciate your input. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sorry, I was all over the place,
No,
but I'm
that's
just
okay.
so excited.
Yeah, we're excited too. Yes, it's a night of excitement.
All
No,
right.
thank you, Dr. Ellis.
All
Really
right.
appreciate that. All right.
Richard's got his finger up.
Yeah, go
Back
ahead,
behind
Richard.
you.
I was waiting for him to stand up and come to. No, come on.
Richard Pearl, Lincoln. This is really almost like a new fresh air, within the community. I've been at the airport. I've been an advocate for the airport for more than a decade. I think I've seen what it could be and I see what it is right now. It's interesting what Sean mentioned, that airports don't typically make money. That is correct. They don't make it operationally. You make it on the side things. As a perfect example, the city of Auburn has their airport. They lose money operationally, but because of their footprint, where the buildings are on it, in the business park, that throws off over $400,000 a year in cash that offsets the operational deficit. And that's the way most airports work, small airports and large airports. So we have that opportunity with the immediate opportunity for the 90 or 84 acres out there. And I agree that I think that we can sell that. I think we have to approach the FAA, but I think that's a small hurdle to accomplish. And that could be this jumpstart for what we need to get out there to start to make something positive action. What we've done in the past, I'm going to use a medical term or a medical analogy over here. My wife is an operating room nurse, and I'm sure Dr. Ellis will confirm, the bleeding always stops. We have gone through and cut costs all the way down to the bottom. We have to turn it around in our mind and say, how can we think of this as a business and grow the business? And we have that opportunity to do that. So this is marvelous. I'm confident that the pilot community out there, the responsible pilot community out there is going to be very supportive of this because it's in their best interest. I was just out there today and I've been out there for a couple of months. Very discouraging to see the amount of weeds out there, planes as was mentioned, just flat tires out there on the tarmac. It just looked in disrepair. We have to do better than that. We can do better than that. So, boy, I am really appreciative of this. And as I said, I'm confident that all of the responsible pilots out there will be 100% behind us. So, thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Go ahead.
Just want to say is that, as Sean said, most airports do lose money, but I have to tell you, I've flown into hundreds of small airports. Lincoln is the busiest small, I wouldn't even say small airport I've ever been to. When I landed in the pattern today, there was a Premier jet landing. There were 6 other planes in the pattern. There was another plane making an approach from the other side. Yeah, I mean, it is a busy airport. And it's, I'll tell you one thing we do have, Lincoln has an airport, Roseville doesn't have an airport, Rockland doesn't have an airport, Granite Bay doesn't have an airport, we do. And this is like something that could really be something special for Lincoln to set.
Thank you. All right. Do we have one on Zoom?
Mayor, we do have some folks. I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. Anybody else in I can't see.
Nope,
the hand.
no,
Okay,
you're good.
We're good. Okay. All right. So let's.
I do want to make a comment.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So what I'd like to make clear is I know I've talked to Dr. Ellis about, the airport. I've talked to Mr. Pearl about the airport. We've all talked to a lot of residents and stakeholders and people who utilize our airport. And obviously there's issues at the airport. There used to be more fiscal mismanagement out there. Luckily it's turned that around at least. And the message was always, we know, we have it on our list. We're going to get to it. And I feel like that's the theme of the night because I can't tell you how many years fire had to hear. We know, we're sorry, we're going to get to it. And so I just want to say that it took us having ARPA funds and the tax sharing agreement, which was really, really, really hard to get. And we were really committed to getting it because we really wanted to be able to make the vote to be able to get you guys staffed up. We want to fix the airport. And it was putting that state audit behind us. It was figuring out what's happening out there. It was getting, paying attention to our public safety and getting permanent city manager in place, but he's here. And I think that I can speak for all of us. We're pretty committed to getting this airport situation figured out, getting it profitable, getting it cleaned up, hopefully getting the weeds taken out, hopefully getting the mini condo situation out there. That's not acceptable. This trailer situation with an empty vending machine, that's embarrassing. A boat in the parking lot, also embarrassing. So the time is finally here, I guess, is the long story longer. And I appreciate your patience and I appreciate your patience, but for anyone who's watching it later, when we say we know we're working on it, we honest to goodness are working on it. It just sometimes takes time. And this is going to take time too, but I know I'm committed to getting on it.
Let me say it also takes partners on staff, and we have not
Yes.
always had those. We do now.
We do now. Yep. Good.
I just have some specific questions. I mean, Councilman Joyner mentioned the fact that a lack of a mule that couldn't tow the jet. Do we have any?
Also embarrassing.
So there are some that are privately owned, but we didn't have any personnel out there, even if we own one,
Yeah,
to be able to do that.
you didn't have a guy to drive the tractor, basically.
Yeah.
Also, about the runway, isn't there a plan to extend it,
Repair it.
repair it?
And it's redo it. Yeah, it's in bad need. There's also an extension plan too.
There is the ability to extend it to 7,001 feet from 6,001.
The repair though, in fact, Dr. Ellis and Richard Pearl were telling me that's super important, now kind of project. And the good news is that, especially if we can kind of turn around the revenue there, FAA pays for so much of these capital projects and our match contribution is pretty minimal in comparison to, a lot of other grants that we apply for. And so it's a doable project. I don't know that it's doable within the next 18 months, but it's doable. And sorry, go ahead.
my only comment on your whole presentation is that you're going to start bringing development opportunities to us immediately as soon as they show up. And I think that's good. There is the, first of all, there's a little operations and doing the code enforcement and so on. That's, that's not a big cost issue to do that. The runway, if I remember the last briefing, which was a year ago, the runway had 3 years life left, which means it has 2 years life left.
That's about right.
Pardon me? Even less than that. That at that time was a $6 million job. So you got to figure it's 8 million now. And the match on that is 20%. It's no longer
10, isn't it? Is it 5?
5 is what
No,
Richard said.
I thought it was 20, 10 from the state and 10 from us. And our ability to get the state, I don't think is very high. Anyway, I'm just, so that's a $1.8 million nut. Commit to a developer unless you commit that you're going to do the runway.
Right.
You can't take your time. In other words, we have to make that decision.
Well, I feel like we've taken our time and now we're here to where we're going to have to make decisions.
And I'm sorry, I wasn't ignoring, I was frantically looking up the project cost. It was, this is a year and a half ago, $12 million was the estimate.
12 million. When did I get 6? So it's 15
twice.
now. Anyway, that to me is the only hurdle right
Right.
now in going forward with a multi-year plan
Right.
to get the airport in great shape. But it's that, where are we going to find, what are we not going to do
Right.
to find those funds? Because I don't think we can use this ARPA funds, the special.
You
I
You
can't
can use
remember
a
what you call
standard
it.
allowance. I don't know that we want to.
Yeah, I'd recommend it.
You can't.
I wouldn't recommend that we do, but you probably could because they're
For-
now
for
assumed.
grants.
Yeah, you can't, but what I think is probably true, and we need to dig deeper, is there is significant infrastructure funding coming down from the federal
I was going to
government.
say that
And we don't
Infrastructure
typically look at
Investment and
that, but
Jobs Act, there's potential. I mean,
There's a
I don't
lot of
know
money
if,
out there, right?
Sean, have you done like a grant scan for what is potentially, and some of it hasn't even been determined yet at the state level.
Correct.
No, but literally 2 seconds of Googling, there's $2 billion that was part of the Coronavirus Response and Relief Act from the first round.
Yeah, airport's got a specific allocation.
And
for
there's
it.
another round of that within this administration's bill. And so,
We may find some unique opportunities there.
yeah, yes. And Dan, you're right. It used to be that on airport projects, I just remember this because of federal projects, it was 11.47% match requirement. And it used to be that Caltrans Aeronautics would kick in 5% or 6% or something like that. I don't think they do that anymore, but
It's still the 11%.
that's still the, yeah.
My only other comment or thought that I guess popped into my head was if we do a master development RFP, I think that I would personally find it very useful if we had preliminary discussions with GSEC. We pay money to get their economic development expertise, their master planning for our region. They probably have some pretty unique insights into what we might want to put into an RFP out by the airport to leverage what their efforts are and bring those scalable jobs here.
Yeah, they reach out to us at least a couple times a year looking for.
They're
industrial
very good
space.
about doing that. I think we should reach out to them if we're going to be putting something like that together to see how do we leverage their efforts against our resources and make it usable.
All right, let's move it forward.
Can I add
Yeah, yeah,
one
go
minor
right
thing to
ahead.
this?
Yeah.
I'm getting a ton of inquiries from people who want to see the airport committee revived and who wish to apply to be on that committee. I think we should discuss whether we changed what.
Didn't we make that an ad hoc?
We made it ad hoc and only.
Well, maybe we can workshop.
Did we
that.
put it back to that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then, either way, we need to bring it back to life.
Yeah.
If it's two council members getting report outs, I'm fine with that. The public can be there.
Yep. So once upon a time, I was assigned as an assistant city manager to go to the airport committee that existed. And then I realized after about 2 meetings that the boss I had was just sloughing off things he didn't want to do because it was a very, very complicated group of people. Because, you know, they were made up mostly of aviation folks or people that were out there. But one thing that's really valuable about it, even though it's one more committee, is that sometimes it's very helpful to have those ideas that you can bounce off of, you know, a diverse group of people and that even help do some of the work, you know, because they're excited about seeing it happen. So
We could also certainly do something where if we actually have something that's actionable that might be coming forward, is do an ad hoc of stakeholders for that specific input for that specific plan or project or whatever, so that we get that stakeholder feedback before we make our decision, you know, in a staff report, instead of memorialize that committee moving forward, maybe. Because I think we had a really robust discussion about why we took it ad hoc. So maybe use that.
Good point about the committee. Okay.
So may I add one more thing? And I can either add it tonight or tomorrow morning at Economic Development. I'll probably do both. I continue to hear from employees at Cessna out at Sac Metro that they are maxed out on space and looking for space. I also hear when I make inquiries that that's not true. I don't know. These are employees who work there who are saying this. And then when you push a little farther, it vanishes. So I'm just not sure what is true. But if that is the case, the opportunity to develop the west side of that airport, which is just fallow land right now, is great. And that would be an incredible opportunity, both for jobs, fuel sales, all the rest. And to finally get that west side up and going. So maybe dig into that, maybe. Could you come up to the microphone? The folks at home can't hear you.
About the runway, I know there was an engineering firm that did this, but have you ever thought about getting a second opinion? All of our aviation, we use ForeFlight, we use AirNav, we different things we look at. Our runway is considered actually good asphalt. So it's not like our runway is going to erode in the next 2 years or we're gonna have a big sinkhole. That's just not the way it works. I think there's a lot more time here than you think you have. So this is not something, even though the engineering report says that, there's not a problem on the runway. What it does need is to be sealed. All the asphalt needs to be sealed. That will preserve your runway. That is infinitely cheaper than replacing a runway. And that will give you a lifespan. Maybe we can turn the airport around and make it more revenue positive in that time. And then this whole discussion will be a little bit more moot. When you have a positive revenue, you feel more comfortable putting money into the runway. But I think right now there's definitely some stop gaps that would save the city quite a bit of money. And the last thing too, on the hangar situation, I guess one of the things that kind of I sent to the mayor was 2 of the larger hangars that are on the street. So they have entrances from the street into the airport. 2 of those were for sale as flex spaces. So we were talking about getting something like the Cessna or Textron, which were coming in there to do it. Those are perfect hangars for people with airport businesses. They have an entrance that can come off the street. They don't have to have the code access to get into the airport. Therefore, those are the perfect place for that. But they're being sold as flex spaces, not even as hangars. That's part of the problem. But you're exactly right. So those buildings should be reserved for people who have airport business, just like that, and would definitely. And I know that some of the businesses out there right now are looking for more space as well. So.
Great. Thank you for that. Okay. All right. You have your direction and we are moving forward. Okay. Item 11, council initiated business. Do any of my colleagues have any council initiated business? No? Okay. No? All right. Then number 12, information items. Sean has a utility billing update for us.
Yes, this is actually just a PSA that Nina Racker, our Finance Director, is going to give about shutoffs, which are occurring this month. And we've been working very hard to try to get that information out to everybody. So
It's just a reminder that we've been, as Sean says, communicating with all of our ratepayers through multiple platforms, through our Facebook page, through multiple email blasts, messages on the bills, that the city is going to be conducting shutoffs on April 20th for past due bills. The rate holidays that were enacted during the intense COVID flux or your period has ended, and that we are now in the process of trying to collect those back payments. We haven't received any funds. I know some people are like, well, is it there a relief? There hasn't been a relief from the state or the feds for these water rates. And so we are now seeking to collect them from ratepayers. We are offering an unprecedented payment plan for residential customers only. Something that we haven't done before. There's no real requirement. You just have to call us and sign up for the plan. We're also directing our ratepayers to the resources that are available to them for those that might be low income or otherwise disadvantaged.
Great. Thank you, Nita. Appreciate that. Any questions or comments on that?
My only question was, when you say there wasn't any assistance from the state, did we not apply through the State Water Resource Control Board fund for, did we not access those funds?
We did, but we haven't gotten any for residential ratepayers. There hasn't been a relief for residential ratepayers for water. There's been other programs for.
But that was directed towards residential ratepayers. That
But it
program.
only went through a certain period of time.
Period of time, correct,
Yeah.
to June 15th.
Yes.
Yeah, so you're talking from the June 15th, 2021
Correct.
forward, any of those, that's what we're now collecting on,
Yes.
because we did receive monies, right?
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear, because I was pretty sure we had received it. So
Yeah,
we're
no.
collecting on the June 15th, 2021 forward.
And all of those funds have been applied to those accounts.
Perfect. So we're not collecting on those. We're collecting on the unpaid post date.
We may be collecting on those same accounts, but again, for that period from the June 15th to forward.
That's what I'm saying, not within the eligible relief period. though.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear. We're not double dipping or something
And
like
also,
that.
just in case, because I think it's really interesting, we had about $1 million of uncollected billings for utility bills through this whole period. And we started doing outreach, I think when Sandra started, it must have been mid-February, maybe March. And we're down to 400, maybe lower than that, $400,000 in
great.
outstanding. So that's a lot of money that's been
That's great
received.
work.
And that, when you say for this period, that was $1 million, June 15th, 2021 forward, and now
Yeah.
we're down over. Oh, that's awesome.
Or people that just didn't take advantage of a
Right,
program.
they
or- And oddly, we actually even have a few commercial businesses that are in business and can easily pay their bills that have decided not to pay them because we couldn't shut anyone off. So they will have to come and pay. They do not qualify for payment plans.
Appreciate it. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment on this item? Do we have anybody left on Zoom, Gwen? Are they all gone?
We do, but no hands are
Oh, there
raised,
they are.
Mayor.
There. Okay. All right. Okay, do the council members have any information items to share?
If you wanted to report out on the creek walk, you can do that as mayor. Otherwise, one of us probably should.
Okay, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. So Councilmember Silhai and I went on the creek walk last week. Mayor Pro Tem Joyner and Councilmember, what?
And Sean was-
Oh, yeah, and Lordson and Sean went the week before. We met with,
There.
yeah. We met with Christine and Montebass and her volunteer group. And we went down into the creek. We met the people that they deal with on a weekly basis. We went to the other side of the road, went down over there. It's really amazing how even though they're still there and they're still camping and like taking up residence there, it's a lot neater and cleaner. Mana has instituted, or you guys have instituted this, bag exchange where they give them garbage bags. And then there's a designated dump spot where the people down there bring it and then the volunteers haul it out. what I said to the group last week is that the progress that they've made is exceptional, and I'm hoping that they work themselves out of a job. Because, and then now with our camping ordinance, bringing it down to 10 by 10, I understand that they're not real happy about that, but they'll, they'll get there. And the goal is to get them out of there and get them help and get them into housing and get them jobs or services that they might need. But it was really eye-opening. And I didn't get to go back in, was it 2019? Yeah, when we first were elected. I didn't get to go because I had just had foot surgery, and that's not conducive to walk down into all that. And so I understand that it was way, way worse. And so just to see the progress is very encouraging. And we owe a lot of gratitude to Christine's volunteer group and Mona Bass and her group. And so I'm hopeful that as we keep moving forward, if we're ever able to bring on this POP team, that would be wonderful. We'll see what happens with that. But the progress that's being made is really encouraging. And I spoke with at PCAR today to their they had a marketing meeting, and Sean had created a really great PowerPoint for Alyssa last week. She did a thing for BIA, and then he just changed a little bit for me, and I used it, and it was really great. Thank you very much, by the way. And when I got to the part about the homeless task force, I mean, I'm not ashamed to say that I think Lincoln, even though Roseville does things, whatever, Lincoln should be a model for, how to handle it. And I think you guys are doing a phenomenal job. And so whatever support we can give you, we will. And I don't know if you wanted to add something to it, but I thought it was just very.
I know it's not
eye-opening and very
agendized, so I won't add much
Yeah,
aside
okay.
from saying that Paul and I were able to do that pre-COVID with Christine, and it was disgusting. And it was offensive, and it was actual physical man-made landfills, like the size of a football field, just filled with junk and hazardous waste. And it smelled, and there was fecal matter on the trails, and you didn't feel very safe being down there without PD, and probation was with us, and they had us hang back lots of times. Then we went this time, and it was like the most sterile encampment I have ever seen. It literally almost could have passed for a campsite, except that like the allotted campsites were like tarps with unhoused and all of their stuff. The night and day difference. And so just kudos to Christine, because when we did that creek walk, and I know we both talked to her and said, this is not okay. This is not sustainable. What do we do? And she came up with the idea of bringing the community stakeholders into her working group at that time. And it's been since that time. And the ideas they've come up with and the progress that they have made and the ownership the community has taken over that I'm like, my mind is blown. I mean, it's so inspiring. And it's part of why I was so wanting to try to get what we can, because I think that we're on to something. So thank you for taking the charge on that.
Yeah. Excellent work. Okay. And then one last
go
thing,
ahead.
I laid our little rubber ducky things here. Oh, all of us attended the celebration of life today for David Attaway, who was the CEO, Chief Executive of Placer Valley Tourism. And he will be greatly missed. He did amazing work for Placer County. I was sharing with people today what just tickled me about David was that he was so proud of At the Grounds. He was so proud of it when it was done and it was unveiled and people started using it. But with the hotels and all of the work they, investment here in Lincoln at McBean and all through the region, he was phenomenal and he did great work, and he'll be missed. And so it was an honor to be there to celebrate his life. And so.
And his hair occasionally looked like
Yes,
that.
his hair occasionally looked like this. Yeah.
And I'll just add real quick on the information since you mentioned it. I did present Selling Lincoln to the BIA last week. And I just have to say it was really exciting to be able to look through those slides and realize how much cool stuff is happening in our community that did not exist 3 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like a giddy little schoolgirl selling our
Right.
town.
We shared the
And if you
same-
could get that PowerPoint out to all of us,
Yeah,
that would be
it
useful.
was great.
Yeah,
Thank you for your
raising
efforts.
canes. I didn't know that
I
was a
texted it
certainty.
when I said, wait, we're getting a cane?
We are,
I know.
but there's a price to pay for it.
Well, okay, well, then I'm anxious to hear about that. Okay, anything else?
Not for me. Oh, Dan has.
Sure. We had our 2x2 on wastewater. We're meeting bi-weekly every 2 weeks. It's going swimmingly. And,
Only that's
and,
great.
it looks like the JPA agreement will be in front of all of us in June, middle of June. It looks like we'll be able to start construction in third quarter of this year, that the funding will be lined up. It is turning out to be a partnership. We've got staff, outside staff, people that have been through this kind of thing before. And I can't, almost a 360-degree turnaround, which is dumb, but it's more than 180 degrees from where it was a year ago.
Well, thank you for your work on that, both of you. Thank you for your work on that.
A lot of discussion, a
Yeah,
lot of listening.
good,
you know.
Yeah.
good. Thank you for that.
I just want, he's being sort of modest because I think that what you'll see in about, I don't know, 2 months is it is the largest project and formation of an agency that Lincoln certainly has ever been part of and probably will ever be part of if we talk about raw dollar figures. And so it's a lot of work for electeds and staff alike that, you know, it really, you could have a full-time staff dedicated to doing this for the next 3 months and you'd still, you know, have a lot left to do. So, and Councilmember Lauritsen and Carl's going to really put a lot of time. They actually even come to meetings before the meetings so we could sit for an hour and a half and strategize before we go in. So.
Your comment made me realize that I do have one information item that probably is important. So I was contacted by the organizer for Infra Day. It's an infrastructure day forum conference. So I'm going to be going down to present as part of, on behalf of the city, and the panel that I'm going to be sitting on is about public engagement in infrastructure decisions, cybersecurity, wildfire, PSPS, and large infrastructure. How are we engaging our public? What does that mean? How does that help us move forward against, you know, climate change, investments that are important? We have several that are important in terms of, you know, infrastructure for your community to prevent against future disasters. The other panelists that will be on my discussion are not city-based. There's a transit, so Anaheim Transit Network. There is a World Airport down in LA County. I think there's another airport. So it's transit-based, and I will be the like city infrastructure base. So to that end, I won't be here at the next council meeting. It's on the 26th, but any of your input on what we do right with public engagement, what we've done wrong in the past and what we've learned, lessons learned, send them to Sean so that he can download all of that. It's a very informal discussion. I don't need like PowerPoint presentation or anything like that, but the collective knowledge of here's what we do that is cool. Here's what works. Here's the projects. Here's what you've done. Send them my way.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Anything else? Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I know, I tried, but it's like. click, click, click. Yeah, so it's.
You know what? I was gonna talk to Paul.